Today on the newscast, Palestinian riots rock Jerusalem. Plus, Vladimir Putin meets with Mahmoud Abbas as tensions between Russia and Israel continue to grow. Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. It is a very joyous time in Israel right now as the people of Israel observe the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as Sukkot. Folks, it is a celebration for the people of Israel. When you travel around the country during this time of year, you'll see those homemade booths or tabernacles set up on porches and decks throughout the country as people sit outside in the booths with their families and celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles as Israel and the Jewish people bring the high holiday season to a close. Remember, it started with Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, moved on to Yom Kippur last week, and now Sukkot kicked off on Sunday, and I believe it lasts until the following Monday. I think the 17th Sukkot comes to a close. But again, it's a festive time for Israel right now, and that's why the news of riots in the eastern half of Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria are all the more troubling. Israel's interim prime minister Yair Lapid met with his security cabinet today to discuss the increase in violence and unrest over the past week. Palestinians rioting not only again in the eastern half of Jerusalem, but in the West Bank, which we call here in the newscast Judea and Samaria. That's what the Bible calls it. It is the biblical heartland of the land of Israel. Now, over the past few days, just to get you up to speed on this, 2 Israeli soldiers have been killed. 1 man and 1 woman, one killed in Jerusalem, one killed in Samaria in the northern half of the West Bank. A Palestinian terror group calling itself the Lion's Den is claiming responsibility, and Israel is on edge right now. We've had rioting in neighborhoods in the eastern half of Jerusalem. I'm thinking of Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah, Abu Tur, that entire area. If you know Jerusalem, again, it's the eastern half of the city, which is a Palestinian-dominated area, a majority Palestinian population in the eastern half of Jerusalem. So riots have broken out. The stone throwing, rock throwing, of course, at Israeli police, but also Molotov cocktails. And again, an Israeli soldier was shot and killed earlier this week. So a lot of unrest, number one, in Jerusalem during this festive Sukkot season. Secondly, Shechem. That's what the Bible called Nablus, which is today a Palestinian city. That is the location of Joseph's tomb, where tradition holds that Joseph from the Bible is buried there, and Jews from time to time are permitted to visit Joseph's tomb, practically every time. And they go, by the way, under escort from the Israel Defense Forces practically every time they are attacked by Palestinian rioters. The tomb has been vandalized many, many times. And Nablus is really a scene or a site where Palestinian Islamic Jihad, that Iran-backed terror group, has set up a stronghold. So the Israel Defense Forces over the past several weeks have been conducting anti-terror operations there. All of this has added up. The anti-terror operations, number one. Number two, just the occasion of the Jewish high holidays as a time for terrorists to stir things up. But third, the constant drumbeat of incitement from Hamas. All of these 3 factors have added up to a very precarious situation on the ground right now, in particular in Jerusalem, as the high holidays draw to a close. Now, tomorrow, folks, and again, we're keeping a very close eye on this. Lapid met with the security cabinet today. Israel is vowing a strong response to the rioting and unrest. Lapid met with the security cabinet, and surely they are looking ahead to tomorrow, a Friday, October 14th, folks. That is, of course, Shabbat for the Jewish people. They bring in the Sabbath, but also that is the day of Friday prayers for Palestinian Muslims. And in some quarters, including Hamas, surprise, surprise, they are already calling for Friday to be a day of rage. We've seen this many times over the past several years. People spill out of Friday prayers in Jerusalem and elsewhere, And then the unrest starts, and Israeli police are attacked, and things spiral downward from there, because the bottom line is, for these rioters, they do not accept the right of the state of Israel and the Jewish people to exist. And that's what it all boils down to. So we're keeping a very close eye on this, folks. A very precarious situation right now. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, number one, because we are mandated to do so in the Bible. But number two, pray for those Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, which the world knows as the West Bank, which so often have been targeted by Palestinian terror over the years. One thing we want to close with, speaking of the Palestinian issue, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, was in Kazakhstan today, and on the sidelines of a conference there, he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, Abbas, during this meeting, railed against Israel, railed against the United States. No surprise there. And he wants Russia to become more involved, and he's been calling for this for years, really, because Putin has been very friendly, needless to say, to the Palestinian cause. Abbas is calling for Russia to take a more active role in any peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians down the line. Putin wants a two-state solution. He's made that very clear, and he was a very welcoming audience today for Mahmoud Abbas, and you have to think, folks, that the timing is no coincidence. We reported just this week here in the newscast about those unraveling ties between Russia and Israel. We had Yair Lapid, the interim Israeli prime minister, condemn Russia this week for those Russian strikes against Ukraine, those ballistic missile and drone barrages. Russia responded and criticized Israel right back, but that's the tip of the iceberg. We've seen over the months Russian condemnation of Israel over airstrikes against Iran in Syria, over the Golan Heights, over Jerusalem, over the Palestinian issue. The list goes on. Russian officials have continuously slammed Israel. Meanwhile, until this week, Israel has essentially tried to play the middle between Russia and Ukraine and not anger Russia. And the main reason for that is that Israel wants to maintain freedom of movement in Syria. Israel wants to be able to continue to conduct airstrikes against the likes of Iran and Hezbollah in Syria under the noses of thousands of Russian soldiers. Remember, Russia entered Syria in September 2015, and they are there to stay. So a very delicate situation, needless to say, for Israel. And that unraveling, I believe, folks, will continue as the seeds are being laid and the groundwork is being laid for eventually that Gog-Magog war that the prophet Ezekiel tells us about in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. I believe a day is coming eventually where Russia will lead that confederation of nations against Israel. The good news, that confederation doesn't get very far. They meet their demise on the mountains of Israel when the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, intervenes and shows himself to the world in a way he hasn't in 2,000 years. That day is coming. We don't know when, but the Bible is pretty clear about it. So look for that Israel-Russia relationship to continue to remain tenuous. Yair Lapid, again, openly critical of Putin and the Russian regime. We'll see what happens November 1st, obviously. Does Lapid remain prime minister, or does Benjamin Netanyahu become prime minister once again after that Israeli election? Netanyahu and Putin enjoyed a very warm relationship, and Bibi visited Russia many times to meet with Putin. We shall see, folks. Fasten your seatbelts. We live in perilous times, no doubt, but these are also Bible times. God is in control. Don't forget, be encouraged. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.